Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. I'm your host, Space Tomato. This is episode 20, the big 2-0. We're getting up there, almost as old as I am now, in terms of weeks, I guess. And today, I have my guest, GoMitchUrself, of course, Mitch. Big time, long time fan of Star Citizen and a big part of the garden community. Thank you for joining me today, Mitch. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, no, it's good. Tēnā koe. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be on here and, tēnā koutou katoa, everyone out there.
Yeah, man.
So speaking some Te Reo, which is the native language here. So
Well,
keep
happy
that
to
fired. Yeah, no, happy to be on and excited to talk about CitizenCon.
Yeah, man.
It's been
Happy
a
to have you. So CitizenCon was yesterday, but before we get to CitizenCon, we're going to talk a lot about that today, mainly what we were expecting, what we thought of it, and kind of what we're expecting moving forward now that we've seen it. But first, let's take a step back and talk about how you even came across Star Citizen. How long you been following it?
So I first came across Star Citizen way back, probably just after the Kickstarter finished, I think, because I remember I couldn't jump in on it. But at that time, I only had an Xbox, and so can't do anything, can't jump on, can't play. So I didn't purchase it at all. Didn't really pay much more attention other than looking through the Kickstarter page. And it wasn't until pre-COVID, right before COVID, that I started watching a few streams. And I actually went on Salty Mike stream and was like, "Why are you playing this? It's laggy. It looks empty. What's going on?" And he kind of, being Salty Mike, he kind of was a bit salty. And he was like, "Don't be on my stream if you." I was just genuinely curious. But he's a cool dude. And it just sparked something. His passion for it sparked something. And I started watching videos. Started watching. And this is straight after 3.8.2, I think. And I hold it out, and I think I got it just before Invictus. During the lockdown, I brought myself some joysticks, and I just started following week by week, watching things from the past, watching streamers like yourself, watching anything and everything I could find, because I had lots of time in lockdown, and here we are in lockdown again. But
Yeah.
I just had all this time to, just dive deep into this massive universe, lore-wise and gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
Exciting.
It's a good time now to have some time to jump into something like this. So you are coming up almost on about 2 years then, right? Did you join before or after the last CitizenCon?
No, so I did not go to I didn't even know about CitizenCon.
Okay.
Back then.
So
yeah.
this is your first one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but I mean, I've watched all the live streams. I've watched that Pioneer advert like a million times.
But you know what to expect, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll touch on that a little bit more later, but I actually want to go back to something that you were talking about, and that is like when you started to learn more about Star Citizen and you really wanted to dive in and get more information. I know that you ended up in my community and ended up being a pretty big part of the garden, being here regularly and obviously now on the podcast. But as you started to really get into it, what was your main source of finding out about the game? Did you go to the Star Citizen YouTube? Did you try and find an org? Did you go to Reddit, Spectrum? Like, what was your progress into the community?
So, I think it started with streamers, because I wanted to kind of see the game be played before I had got it.
That makes sense, yeah.
And it probably only took me about 2 weeks of doing that before I got addicted and was like, I can't wait. I need to jump in on this and try it out. And that then shifted, because I was playing the game. I didn't need to see it played, but I wanted to hear more about it. Switched to YouTubers. And in that, I had already been watching Star Citizen's content, so SE, Calling All Devs, and a game dev, Star Citizen Live. And so that kind of led me into watching host, breakdowns, Board Gamer, yourself, Noob, Nubifier, and it just, yeah, that's, I pretty much heard the same thing talked about 5, 6 times. So I kind of, well, there was, it was just interesting, and hearing everyone had a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
Someone catch information that someone else had missed,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was information overload, but I loved it. And so YouTube is where I get most of my information outside of the Star Citizen uh, monthly reports and
Right. Yeah. Their own official sources and stuff.
yeah,
That's cool. That's just, it's very interesting. I like to hear that. I've been a part of the community for a really, really long time. I was kind of a weird situation. I was much like yourself, where I originally heard towards the beginning near the Kickstarter. It's like 2014, I think. I was in college though. I didn't have the money to build a PC like that. I had an Xbox, so I didn't really get into it, but I paid attention on the fringes for a while. And as I started to get sucked into the community more, I realize it's different now, or even in the last 2 years, than it was back when I was getting into it, 2016 and 17. So I was wondering if like what that progression is like. But that makes
is it
sense
similar?
going from sorry.
Is it similar or is it different?
Um, I don't think there wasn't as much reliable YouTube coverage back
Okay, yeah,
then. Back then, some of the big YouTubers that are doing this were still doing it back then. Board Gamer, STL Youngblood was somebody that I watched a lot back then,
mm,
and several others. But the stuff that they were reporting on was mainly, because back then the news that you
yeah,
were getting was mostly conceptual stuff. Some of it was like iffy. It was a lot
relative.
of yeah, it was a lot of stuff in the around the verse, but it was just like it was none of it was really that tangible because we weren't getting it in updates. We didn't know when we were getting it, all that kind of stuff. So YouTube wasn't as high a source of how I got into it. I got into it through discussion because everybody was
Yeah,
speculating. So it was like days on Reddit, going onto Spectrum, like reading what people are saying. I didn't actually get into the YouTube side of Star Citizen or even the Twitch side really until the last like 2 years, three years
yeah.
maybe, when I started doing it basically. But yeah, I just wanted to pick your brain about that a little bit. So let's turn to CitizenCon, since I'm sure everybody wants to hear more about that. And
Yep.
going by the subject that we were just on, being your first CitizenCon, despite knowing kind of what to expect, because you said you've watched the other ones, how did the experience go for you versus what you expected?
So I obviously, for people who've listened up till now, you know that I like the information. I like absorbing the information. So the the amount of concept art that we saw at the beginning before the 400i, um, that for me I really enjoyed. But I've heard some comments that it was quite dense and slow to begin with, for some people. Uh, but looking at the previous Citizen Cons, and my expectations going into this one, uh, was a massive. I was dreaming. I was dreaming about what I was going to see. I mean, I sent Space a message beforehand, just in case it happened, which it didn't, saying I wouldn't be surprised if we see Nix or like hear about Nix, or maybe some systems coming up in the future. That's the level, because 2019 we were in Stanton, we were hearing about Pyro.
Mhm.
Um, we didn't get to see much of Pyro at all, but we heard about it. That was the next thing, and so I I expected quite a lot from that. Um, when the panels came up, uh, what we got is what I kind of expected, um, to an extent.
Mhm.
Yeah, that didn't surprise me. But I also think there was, how it ended as well was kind of a big letdown.
Yeah.
Especially sitting through. Well, to be fair, I have to admit, so I got up at 3 a.m. to join on
Oh
Space's
boy.
stream, and then
Ooh.
4 a.m. is when it started. And I think it's when they started. I can't remember which came first, but when they started talking, it was after ship talk. I think
Mhm.
after ship talk, I started to put my head down on the pillow on the couch, and they were just talking. There wasn't much on screen, and I think I just fell asleep.
Yeah.
So I had to watch the rest of it. I watched it in like 1.5 speed on YouTube after it had released.
I'll
I missed the show after that.
I'll be completely honest. I was on the stream the whole time. And so like, between the technical stuff and keeping the stream running, uh it was just a long stream. So I it was probably around 3/4 of the way, maybe like the 5.5, 6 hour mark, where
Yeah.
things started to just pass through my ear and go like there's a lot of CitizenCon I have to go back and watch because I missed a lot of it too.
There's a lot of information to sort through, like a lot,
Hmm.
but a lot of it is not useless, but a lot of it is not really going to benefit the average backer knowing, because it doesn't actually,
Sure.
it's not, there's no output and there's no outcome for these in the short term of
Hmm.
what they've talked about. And I'm mainly talking about the Tony Zurabik, that portion
Hmm.
of it, especially the first half of what he spoke about.
See, now that
Um,
right there, that's what I don't remember.
yeah.
I
Well,
gotta go back.
I've probably watched it twice now.
Okay.
And oh my gosh, he took something before. He was talking so fast. Maybe it was because I had it on,
No, no,
1.5
no.
speed.
You were, yeah. That
Yeah,
is something I remember is him at certain points getting really, really, really fast and talking really fast and going like this and getting really excited and then kind of sitting back.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, this dude is getting pumped for this stuff. Um,
No,
I don't,
and
I
that's all.
don't, I don't really remember that part. Like I said, so much, but I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of the idea that like there was a lot of information presented.
Yeah,
And I would actually I'd stop one step short and say maybe not so much that it wouldn't be interesting to people, but that it wasn't presented in a good way for the audience.
yeah. No, I think
And
that there's very much the common consensus out there is that it was good, the information was good, but it was just it was designed to put people to sleep in a way. There was all the action was at the beginning, all the good stuff was at the beginning.
Mhm.
Then it was Tony Zurabek, but everyone was kind of like washed out by that point.
The pacing,
Um,
yeah, the pacing was a little weird.
but what about you? So for your multiple, is this your third CitizenCon? Fourth that you've
The
watched?
first one I watched was 2016, I believe. So this
Okay.
would be
Yeah.
my fourth.
So
Um,
yeah, your expectations.
oh gosh, it's just such a heavy question. I'm gonna have to write this down, man. This is gonna have to be a blog post for me to get all my real
Yeah.
thoughts out. But
Look forward to reading it.
I So I put out a video the week before saying like, "Hey, this is what I think
Mm.
CitizenCon should be."
Yeah.
And I think everybody probably should look at the event in two ways. One, based on what they think it should be, and two, based on what CIG was trying to make it. As
Yeah.
far as what I think it should be, it was not very good because what I was saying was, hey, you know what? Look at all the stuff that you're currently developing, that you're working on, that we know we're going to have. Um,
Mm.
and bring in this gameplay demo and find a way to include a lot of that in that demo as a slice, as a way to show a slice of next year's gameplay. And I don't really think that they achieved that. In fact, I think that they showed us gameplay that won't be as full as what we'll be playing in a year. And most of the time they go too far, right? They do stuff that people
Yeah.
believe we're never going to get. I think that what you would be playing if you were going to run a mission like that, let's say a settlement infiltration mission on a moon in Pyro, CitizenCon next year. We're assuming that we're actually going to be getting Pyro, but let's say, uh, looking at all the gameplay aspects of it, I think we'll have
Mm.
all that by this time by that time next year. In fact, people are saying, hey, they're showing things that some people are saying they're not showing anything new, and I'm not saying that. They had the personal inventory system in there, right? That nobody has gotten to see yet. Granted, that's coming in the next update, but they had more stealth gameplay, which is something that we've seen before, but now it seems like it's actually functioning in the game as a
Yeah.
as a
Well, that's something I've noticed too, and that's right. That's it right there. Like we were seeing in the last sitcom we've seen stealth gameplay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, the AI has not been to a level where they've been able to react as such,
Mm-hmm.
as we saw this time. And so that's a big step. And then we've got the inventory thing, and we are getting that next patch. But I mean, a lot of work is still being done on that all the way through next year.
Yeah.
What we're getting is very tier zero, and what they showed us is essentially what to expect
Yeah.
in 350.
And that combined with everything else was just really restrained.
Yeah,
And that's cool.
I think that's intentional.
Yeah, and they can do that. But then maybe include some of the panels as a connection to that gameplay you showed us. The audio panel could have been a great way for them to show us what they were trying to show us, but take an asset from the gameplay demonstration and show us
Yeah.
them doing that in the engine rather than talking. And I think that was kind of where I was coming from in that they presented it. They did what they wanted to do. CitizenCon
Mm.
was a success for them because they gave updates on where they were on major things and they showed kind of the target of what they want to do next year, but they didn't show it to people who were going to be playing it. They showed it to people who would maybe have been invested in it or something, you know?
Yeah.
Nobody really got excited from the
On
talking.
the yeah, and on the gameplay as well. The first thought that went through my head when they were showing it the third time was, you remember the Squadron 42 uh that
The
uh,
vertical slice?
no, the more recent thing that they did
Oh,
last year. Or this year.
for instead of CitizenCon last year.
Yeah, they did that 40-minute long
Yeah.
episode,
Hmm.
and they showed the talking of the NPC and you walking into the conversation and breaking it.
Yeah.
And they did that like 15 minutes, it felt like,
Hmm.
of the same thing. And it was cool. It was a great tech demo. But I was like, the three different ways of going into the system at the third time, although it was awesome seeing all the different ways you could go in and the stealth and all that, I felt like it was borderlining just that repetitive, you know, ness that
Yeah.
almost wasn't necessary. But if, like you said, if they'd paced that out
Hmm.
and they attached, for example, the sound team, they could have talked about how AI detects sound,
Sure.
uh, and attach that to that third bit later down the track, a
Hmm.
bit down. That would have been quite good, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite part of the whole CitizenCon was that first video that they did, um, with the carrack, the carrack coming in with the Pisces there and it flies away. That that,
Oh,
that
yeah.
whole that was an incredible piece of art.
Yeah. They had
Uh,
some great freaking cinematics in there.
yeah, the art team that did that was incredible. I feel like they just wanted to show off their planet, and they did, or their planets, and they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you had just said something a couple minutes ago that I wanted to comment on. I don't remember what it was, but the the overall vibe that I got from CitizenCon, it felt. Oh no, I remember what it was. The what you were saying about. Well, actually, you were referring to what something I said, but basically that they could be showing the gameplay and then giving a demonstration from one of the panels. They tried to do that in last CitizenCon when they had the whole gameplay demo going on. Um, Chris and Todd were standing up there, and as they'd go through the demo, they'd be like, okay, we have this person on from this team. They're going to talk about what you're seeing as you go through it. And
Yeah. I'm
I'm not saying that replaces the panels, but some of the
Mm,
information that we got on panels could have been done there.
yeah.
And that would have been a great way. In fact, actually, not been done there because I think that format is a little busy.
Yeah.
But rather cut those slices out that they normally would have talked about at those times and move them into the panel. Show us that
Yeah.
cut of gameplay with the emphasis on what that team's working on. There was a point where I believe it was Todd Pappy who was talking about the reputation system.
Mm,
And I was thinking, man, that would have been great because Tony Z was also on talking about how like there's
yeah.
persistent reputation. Why didn't they connect those two
Yeah. There was
together?
a lot of repeated information, um, in that regard. I
Yeah.
found, from the first bit and Tony's Zurich.
Yeah.
One thing I'll just look at my notes. The first note that I wrote when they were talking about jump points, I found this super interesting
Hmm.
because it almost to me, look, this is completely speculative, and I'm probably very wrong when I say this, but uh, they were talking about multiple entry and exit points at jump points,
Hmm.
right? So my first thought: are they getting rid of jump gates? Um, or is the jump, is how does that work? Because if there's multiple entry, and exit points. Or maybe the entry and exit is the same thing, but when you enter in, I don't know,
I
but you know what I mean? Like when you enter a
yeah.
galaxy, so exiting the jump point, maybe that's what they're referring to. But they a couple of things on that. So they were very, I mean, it was an artist talking about it, so they're going to use very strong language here, but they're talking quite wondrous. They mentioned with speed in mind, which is really interesting. Like to break that down, maybe what we hear about in the future,
Hmm.
what they meant by that, and magnetic lines and harmonious and beautiful for either. So language, all to tell you what system you're in. So when so for example, they had the magnetic one for Stanton, to
Yeah.
show the kind of system you're in, but very chaotic when you went into Pyro.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a really interesting and nice arty touch to really, because you got sound and then you got visuals, and visuals is just as much what you're feeling as what sound makes you feel.
Hmm. Hmm.
And for those that don't know, I come from a film bachelor's degree, so my whole most of my adult life has been around how to make people feel something. Um, and yeah, I thought that was quite cool. And there's that multiple entry and exit points is it just
It's
ticking in my mind, because I want
yeah.
that means you can't just sit at a gate in Pyro and
Hmm.
just destroy everyone that comes through,
Yeah.
because you might show up somewhere else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And they
just
always wanted that to when they used to talk about jump gates, they mentioned the idea of having multiple exits just so to get away from that possibility of people sitting at an exit and constantly killing people. But you make a good point. They didn't show a single jump gate yesterday, and they showed jump points.
yep.
So
That's,
I
I was yes. I going off what we were talking about last CitizenCon, it ended with the Carrick going through the jump gate
Mhm.
to Pyro. I would have thought, this is just me, I would have thought that they would have started with the Carrick and Stanton going through the updated jump point work that they've done, showing what they've got. And if that's still working, which I know it is, but like if that's not working, then fine. At least having the Carrick start in Pyro,
Mhm.
and I I honestly I thought they were going to show off the new mission system, and then that would have led into going down to the planet to get this, and depending on your reputation, and then this and this and this,
Yeah.
and it would have put it all together. Um, and like they could have picked up they could have escaped in a 400i, like
Mhm.
Star Wars Episode 7. Take that shit, boom. No, we've got to go for the crappy one over there, and it's a 400i. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um. So, and I'm not saying the 400i is crappy. I brought a CC upgrade to it.
But I get what you're saying. And this is something that I mentioned before we started. We kind of got to talking about that there are things that we know. I ranted about this on Astropump's podcast earlier. There are things that we know for sure are being
Yeah.
worked on and are close to being presented to us. The monthly report just this last week said a direct quote from the team. They said that interactivity with doors is progressing well, and we should be expecting to see something soon. But every door in the demo today or yesterday was the same ones we're using in the current game. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying, hey, you got new doors, you better include them in the demo, but that's a very clear opportunity for them to slip in little Easter eggs and little things here and there that players can see and be like, hey, you know what? I see the quality of life improvements and like just the general increase in quality in the game. This is nice, and I'm glad that we'll get that pretty soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of people expected to see salvage, medical, um, a lot of things that they've been shown in ISC and in the monthly reports for
Hmm.
CitizenCon. Uh, but I don't think that was the intent of the CitizenCon.
Yeah.
I think this was a cheap. I like people. There was an argument that was had before CitizenCon. I think maybe Morph did a video on it. Noob did a video on it about CitizenCon taking way too much money from the development and taking development time and all that jazz. Um, and I'm not going to have an opinion on that argument. I haven't been around long enough to really, and I don't know the industry to really comment on that. But this CitizenCon, I don't think took much uh, time because they weren't creating something a sandworm, to show off. Uh, for the CitizenCon, they were showing what they had essentially and talking about it. And
Hmm.
so I think they this was just a cheap win for them. Um, and I think next year, COVID be willing, I think next year CitizenCon is going to be epic. I think it was totally intentional that we heard nothing about Squadron 42. Um, I didn't expect to hear anything about Squadron 42, but
I
uh,
didn't. Yeah, I didn't either. I agree with you on that. I am not going to make any more expectation based statements about next CitizenCon. I'm over that. I'm
yeah,
done
no,
with that life.
I'm not going to go there either. But what I will say is, and this is straight from Chris Roberts' mouth, that they're going to start when Squadron 42 is ready. You'll know about it 6 months before its release.
Hmm.
They're going to pump up advertising. They're going to bring back. So they want to do four of those briefing room is what it's called. Four of the briefing room
That's
shows,
it. Yeah.
right? They started it, and then I think after they needed to pump something out because the community that year was going crazy with the lack of information. We didn't have the progress tracker. They didn't tell us anything about Squadron 42. All the streamers, everyone, all the influencers were raging about the lack of information. Communication is awful. Blah 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 blah. We fixed that, I think. But in that post, yeah. So I reckon we'll see three more briefing rooms.
Hmm.
We'll see one, and then the two will be leading up to the actual release with because they'll come out quarterly, 6 months. But um, whether that's next year, CitizenCon or not, we'll find out.
Yeah. We'll see. So let's talk. I know I personally have been bagging a lot on CitizenCon since we
Yeah.
started talking. I've been talking about what I didn't like. Let's talk a little bit about the good things that we saw at the event. What has us looking forward to the future, and kind of what kind of good things this is telling us about the next year or so. So I'll give you a go, and then I'll take a shot at it.
All right. I think this is great for gameplay. I think we're going to get gameplay this year coming.
Okay.
Um, it may be very surface level gameplay, but we're getting it. The big take that everyone should take from CitizenCon, and I mean this like the big take should be NPCs walking around on the planet. Uh, they also showed off spawn closets, and that's another big take. The NPC, you heard about the missions that there where you have to protect NPCs against swarms.
Yeah.
Uh, just the revamp of missions. We're finally getting there. It's been a long to get out of the Flash and to get out of all the old system tech that's been preventing these missions. We're starting to see it come through.
Yeah. The
And
fact that you can take 5 people and clear out a bunker and not get one kill each person now would be
yeah,
nice.
yeah. I mean, look, and it's we've seen the first they intentionally showed off the first thing that they showed off on the planet. Do you remember what it was?
The
When the guy
clouds?
got out of the ship.
Oh, when he got out of the ship, showed the landing gear on the ship. After
And
that?
the missile turret.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is something a lot of people have been calling for at space stations, but how it gives a reason to use the A2 bomber now because you're going to be going those bunkers and you're going to be shot down by missiles.
Yeah.
Uh, and there'll be different levels of intensity. So there'll be some with just turrets, normal turrets, and there'll be some with missile turrets.
Imagine needed to bring in an A2 bomber just to get into that like little settlement.
Yeah, but like but it's
I mean, that's a
more
bigger
yeah,
scale. Yeah,
yeah.
same idea. I get what you mean.
And there's just so much potential that I see. And that was probably my biggest highlight from that, from a gameplay perspective.
Hmm.
The short term, next 2 or 3 um, patches before this time next year, I think
Yeah.
we're gonna have fun next year. It's still gonna be laggy. It's still gonna be 50 people per server. It's still gonna be desync, but we're gonna start to get more bits and pieces that we can actually do, not cargo deck.
Yeah, maybe we'll actually be able to
About
use cargo decks.
Yeah. Well, I everyone's saying that this next couple of patches are big for cargo. The cargo refactor. We're not getting cargo refactor anytime soon.
No, you don't think so?
Now I was looking at the progress tracker. Things for cargo um, are are very probably at least yeah. We're looking at quarter 3 or quarter 4 next year
Hmm. I was hoping
before we
three.
see the changes.
I was hoping 317, but it looks like they've been pushing it back in that progress tracker. So yeah, I could see it taking a little longer. It's weird too because you would think they'd try and push back the whole series ships to coincide with that. I wonder how that's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, look, I could be wrong, but we based on what, like, if we're gonna go into, I'll hold this thought, and what were you excited for? Because we'll go into the Tony Zerovic if you want.
Um, I was
Like,
I
yeah,
was excited for a deeper explanation of server meshing. I don't feel like I've appreciated how much they said yet because I was just so like blank by then. But I'm gonna go back and rewatch it and probably try and make a video or at least a blog post about it. What
yeah,
actually really got my attention? Well, let me talk about the small things. So there were a couple small things here. Sandbox platforming was really sick. I'm glad they showed that off. Using the tractor beam to move some boxes and use that to get a different. Freaking love it. Real
yeah.
nice.
Like
That's juicy.
people
Yeah.
gameplay. Yeah,
Keep that up. That was great. Um, the stealing of the artifact was good fun, and kind of the alluding to the fact that you should be able to sell it soon. Yet another thing that I think they probably could have included in a panel discussion. Um, that was
I
really
think that's
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, let's see. The new cloth tech was good. Wind effects were good. Cowering AI. I listed off a bunch of things, but really, let me say the big thing at CitizenCon. This is not necessarily the most important thing, but I think this was the biggest like realization or shift in my thinking that I had, and that was that I was originally thinking of Pyro as just a new system, as just opening up a new space, expanding the game. But it honestly feels like they are now kind of starting to position it as like an expansion, and they're because they're talking about new fauna, new clothing, new
Yeah.
weapons, new location types, new mission types, new ways that you're going to need to consider your fuel and ammo, medical, new types of space stations, new types of just like everything. It seems they're really pushing to be different, and I realized as they kept going through this first panel, and they're talking about derelict space stations that explorers can go to, and
Mm.
asteroid belts where miners can go to. Most people are thinking of Pyro as a pirate's paradise, but they're legitimately building Pyro to have good reasons for everybody to want to go. And this is going to be definitely more than just some lawless wasteland. I think this is going to be a legitimate, functioning system that just has more danger involved.
Yeah, and can we be completely honest here? And Stanton, if you get attacked by two pirates in your little ship or whatever ship you got, and you blow up, the security is not going to be on you fast enough to keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
So Pyro is not going to be any different. The only difference is that the pirates and Pyro, the players, won't go to prison. And if they get killed eventually, there won't be necessarily a comm system so you can track them.
But
So that
that's where the probability volumes come in, though, right?
yeah, but what I guess what I'm trying to say is people shouldn't be scared of Pyro. Pyro is going to be amazing, and just on the artifact that you mentioned before, that made me giddy, and because when you walk through Skyrim and you walk past the NPCs and they're like, oh, did you hear about the king, blah 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a dragon, blah 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 over there. There's this person been terrorizing our town. All that kind of adds to the lore and the atmosphere of where you are, or in Star Citizen's case, the system or the planet that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love a simple sequence of missions to find these artifacts to then sell back to a gang or something like that, or for a gang, um, and find out about these items, through the game, lore through the game, because that's a ancient alien species that's been killed, that's killed themselves off or whatever,
Yeah.
and like that just it makes me want to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me want to go down, look at random shops, find this guy who's on this planet somewhere that
Yeah.
I've heard
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of.
And the best
Uh,
part, go ahead.
no, 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 no. You go.
I was just gonna say the best part is that they showed in the video that like, yeah, you got that one artifact in the mission, but they've made four. It makes a circle, right? So
Yeah,
like they could be spread out in other places of the system, and finding one artifact that is part of a matching set. Oh,
yeah.
that's perfect.
And and there's two parts to that as well. Like one, what does it do when it's a matching
Hmm.
part of set? But the other thing did cross my mind, and this is the skepticism coming in. Did they make this artifact? Like they talked about how they made it with 3 materials and the concept art and so on.
Yeah.
Did they make this just for CitizenCon, or is it an actual mission chain that they're working on, built in with reputation? They didn't really specify that I heard.
I think this is actually for the. I mean, we've seen confirmations from people in the company that everything at CitizenCon is being worked for to go into the actual game. I think this
But
does seem like the kind of thing that they can fit into the actual game somehow.
yeah. Well, everyone should be excited that this direction of an artifact
Hmm.
in-game stuff like this
Yeah.
is a really good sign for future gameplay, whether it's in Stanton or in Pyro.
Hmm.
That they're actively, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the progress tractor um, that has narrative attached to it, and
Yeah.
like that shouldn't be might be just written words on the website, but we shouldn't dismiss that for in-game stuff either.
Yeah, the narrative part of the month report talks a lot about the things they're doing in terms of missions and reputation, and these are
Mm.
things like these objects. You don't when somebody talks about exploration gameplay, if you ask them what they're talking about, they're gonna be like, scanning and going somewhere. You can't really package up exploration as one single, mining is shooting a laser at a rock, right? You can't just say what exploration is in some simple
Yeah,
way, but having reasons to find specific objects like these artifacts is part of exploration gameplay. The fact that they're even considering them at this point is good, but I think the question that everybody pops to everybody's mind when they look at this is how are they going to make enough of them that they matter, but that also a decent amount of people can find them or even consider looking for them.
I've got a couple more notes that I'll quickly fire at you from just that first sequence, if you want.
Okay,
Um, so the pistol, with that pistol's in the game, right?
Nakota, yeah,
Yeah, I've got to get my hands on that pistol. It's so cool.
it is cool,
I
yeah.
felt bad for James Cameron though. His reloading failed like 3 or more times.
Yeah, I was like, why is he reloading again? He hasn't shot
Yeah,
anything.
and so I'm like, did they leave that in just because they didn't have time to record it, or did they just want to show that it is buggy? Did they not want to,
Yeah. I just think
sell
they
it?
didn't want to cut from different sessions just for the heck of it.
And then the I've completely lost my yeah, just the freedom of choice in the outpost is something to really be excited for.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for
Ye- I am
for that month.
glad I am glad that they took the opportunity to take what I think is one of the biggest features of Star Citizen, which is the amount of choice that you have and build that into the demo.
Yep.
The way that they showed it was nice. The fact that they didn't just show the simple interaction with the store owner, but rather everything that happened outside, inside, all of that was nice. It's good
Yeah.
to remember how staged it was, though. I'm sure there are going to be missions like this, but I, I sometimes I watch these missions and I'm just like, I'm trying to picture doing it as a group. And what would it be like if you had one player who just, I don't know,
Yeah.
could never stop sprinting, right? And you had one player who was just gonna ruin it all. How would it turn out? Would we all just die? Could we even get away from that? Would they blow up the ship? So,
Well, I want to know like with the can you do we don't have anything like C4 in the game. Like
no.
I would like to blow up that missile turret as I'm leaving,
Hmm.
and then someone can't shoot me. There's little things that I saw throughout that I was like, I don't want to have to fire a massive rocket at it. I like the
See,
idea of stealthily, like,
well, it would be
you know,
cool if maybe you had somebody down on the cargo
yeah,
deck, and as you were flying away, they launched a missile or something. That'd be pretty cool.
yeah, no. Ultimately, I was really happy with that gameplay session, but I can't even remember what the second option was. The second thing I'm
The
trying to remember now.
second
Was that?
option, the second option was just killing, just betraying, having the
Oh,
conversation, and then being like,
right.
nah, and shooting the guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, I have one note for the sound. For the sound.
yeah. Okay.
it works well with QA. The new app that they've got, the new tool that they've got, just works
Mm-hmm.
well with QA. That's my takeaway from that.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, it's like something basically allows QA to just in and out test things super quickly, right?
Yeah, and them to work together. So you've got QA and you've got the actual devs being able to work on the same thing
Yeah.
together if they find a bug.
Yeah.
But the idea, I think, that they were talking about trust is there shouldn't be bugs. That's how much they trust the system.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I noticed as well with the sound team and um, it's further down my notes, the entity for the entity map thing that they had during the server meshing talk, where they
Mm-hmm.
looked at a ship and they went
Yeah.
down and broke it down like the bubbles for each like cargo grid for this, and they attached to that thing.
Mm-hmm.
The sound tool looked very similar, and I'd imagine that was intentional by
Huh.
design, so that they because server meshing it was talking about the actual entity spawning, which is massive for reducing so like he said swapping out guns, for example, can be taxing,
Mm-hmm.
and this app kind of reduces that tax that it would have on the server.
Right.
So just really interesting parallels that I saw.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other little things that I wanted to touch on was reputation. It was mentioned it briefly earlier. The reputation system. I thought they'd go into more detail about it, and I wish they had, but they did show a little bit of how they've expanded it, added reputation to other mission givers, rather companies, which is something they mentioned in the monthly report. So props to them on that. Another thing they mentioned in the monthly report was custom lighting for airlocks, which again was in the demo, so that's good. And the NPC cowering animations and behaviors were also in the monthly reports. So while I have been railing about things that are obvious that should be in the game, those are little things that were included.
Yeah. I mean, the an NPC behaviors, I think, especially the cowering, there needs to be a bit more work on that. I
Oh
think that was
yeah,
very,
the
yeah.
security behaviors are pretty bad.
Yeah. This is going to sound like a really so the beginning of the Tony Zurabek um, sesh, I'm going to call it a sesh, uh, reminded me of a really intense Info Runners video.
How so?
The it just honestly it felt like speculation coming from the devs.
Hmm.
The whole thing was like, it would be really great if we can do this, and this is what's going to happen, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And granted, they're more like they have the authority to talk about these topics, where us streamers, people, whatever, who aren't working at CIG, are just speculating and
Right.
going off what we've been told. But it, I was just listening to the whole thing, and I was just like this is all great information, and this is all kind of like cool. Like we're going to be talking about this for ages. There's going to be breakdowns of these videos for the next couple of months to come, especially yourself when you do look at the monthly reports. You're going to be drawing back on these videos and because
They'll be
it was just
referencing all
like,
this stuff. Yeah.
yeah, but it was how they were talking about it. I couldn't. I was. It just and then they weren't showing anything,
Yeah. I
and
think like I said, I haven't really watched that panel fully again, but I think that's probably going to be the biggest disappointment of the whole
yeah,
thing for me is that I do remember what you're talking about. A lot of the discussion going on there, I was like, this is not the year for this. Last
yeah.
year, the year before, I get that. But like, I'm going to stick to what I said in my video, like that kind of stuff. I
Do you know?
feel like
You
it
know
should be
what
kind
would
of
have been
tucked
better?
away.
Do you know what would have been better? The video that they released with Tony Zerovic early in the year, talking about the dynamic events.
Hmm.
That would have been a better, that would have been better put in CitizenCon,
Yeah,
and
but
then
we
fed.
needed that at that time. We
Yeah,
needed that.
yeah. So earlier I said I've got a little thing for you.
Sure.
So, Pyromania 2022.
Oh, did they have
That
something
was
out?
the dynamic event. Yeah,
Where was
along
that?
with it was on the list on the when he showed Jump Town 2. It had Xeno Threat. Um,
Hmm.
Pyromania 2022 was in there.
Interesting.
So if we're going to be speculative about next CitizenCon, uh, no, read into that what you will.
Yeah, I mean it could just as easily be Pyromania 2023
Yeah.
this time next year.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there was also a transport infiltration or transport
Right.
infiltrator
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there was a couple of notes that I wrote in there. So Jump Town 2, dynamic locations. So we kind of already knew that. Environment art is looking at doing extra stuff for different places. So that means that uh, little locations. So like what we already have
Yeah,
and
like
standings
derelicts
going
and
to get
stuff.
developed on.
Hmm.
Derelicts, yeah. So that's quite interesting. They're adding PvP for Xenothreat next time round. Ninetales, I feel like they don't really know what they're doing with that. They're going to make it better for trading
Hmm.
this time round, but they've left a switch in to switch it back to how it was, so that you only get the medical supplies mainly from the derelicts, the
Yeah.
broken ship.
Yeah.
Uh, and there was a So ATC is they're doing work on that, which is actually, if you have a look at the progress tracker now, update with docking. So knowing when a ship at Hull C, for example, has got lots of cargo
Hmm.
versus when it's not, because you can imagine trying to giving you a hangar with a in Hull C, and it's like, well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They've that kind of
mm,
stuff is good. The little things that they talked about that they're gonna add into some of these bigger things are good, and we didn't even really touch on Gen 12 or Vulcan. Um, I that's another one that I'm gonna have to watch again, to be honest, though.
yeah, no, I've literally got one note for that, which I thought was important. I really struggled with that one. I fell
Yeah.
asleep in it the first time round,
Yeah.
and the second time round, it's for the people that can. But my note literally goes, and I've used arrows in my notes. It's direct X11, move to Gen 12 and Vulcan, which is where we're at now,
Hmm.
and the next step is using multi-cores for your CPU. So the idea of getting more use out of your CPUs, and just updating your graphics
Yeah.
on your PCs, everyone.
I
Not your
hope they
cards.
can. I hope they can do a good job on that next year. But let's go ahead and wrap it up. So let's say out of 10 for this event, just to make things simple, what would you give this?
I hate dead air, but this is I wasn't prepared to give this a score out of 10. Okay, well
That's
I'll go for
the
look
tricky.
the desync. Oh, not desync. Sorry, yeah, desync. The Gen 12 server meshing, the sound stuff, all the dense information. Look, I'll probably give a 6 out of 10. The information was good, but it lacked visuals and cohesiveness to the rest of the CitizenCon.
Yeah.
Um, the ships. I mean, we haven't talked about ships. I'm in love with the Banu Merchantman. The Banu Merchantman was one of my first purchases.
Hmm.
Uh, I now have 3, um, which I'm planning on.
That's a lot.
Look, I'm embarrassed, but I'm now closer to concierge than not. Um, and I'm trying to
You're not
but
concierge, but you have a Banu Merchantman.
yeah.
Wow.
Um, I got it. So I got a $280 merchantman.
I
That's
see.
with
Yeah.
yeah, got a couple of those. But the ship stuff. The only reason why the ship stuff is lacking so much in a score, whatever score I give it, it doesn't really matter, is the visuals. They
Hmm.
didn't. I was like, show me the Banner Merchantman. Show me what you're talking about. I love your faces and I love your voices. They're amazing. But I want to see what your words are talking about.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Uh, can I just say, sorry, one more thing?
Hmm.
Why? Because we didn't talk about ships.
Yeah.
The refining ship is not the raft, not the Argo raft.
Okay.
This could be me, but they said Misk Turi ship
Right.
for
Yeah,
the
they
raft.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at the image that was on there, that they blurred out. It looks like a Misk ship, so we're getting a Misk
They definitely
refinery.
were hinting at a misc ship. Yeah.
Yep. And you know how they showed the 4 upcoming ships as well.
Hmm.
They said they want a Misk Explorer. This is just speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, people. But one of those concept arts looked like the front part of the Endeavor.
So I mean, but it would, right? If there was a Misk Explorer, it would look similar to the Endeavor.
Yeah, I'd take it with a grain of salt. They might release the front half of it and bring the back half with modules and stuff later on.
That is a hot take.
Maybe. I love ships. I don't care what people say. I love ships.
Yeah, I get you.
I play the CCU game, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would probably. I mean, I'd slap a big old 7 on this one. I'd say this is pretty average to me. I think this, if in 4 years, I'll probably look back at this CitizenCon and be like, it makes sense what they did. But from where we are now, this CitizenCon didn't really make much sense, given the state of the community, the state of the game, and kind of where we are in production. I don't think that they did enough to really show why people should be excited about the game next year. And I think that's what CitizenCon should be used for right now. So I'm gonna slap a big old 7 on this one, because there were some really good things that they did show.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was an awful CitizenCon. I think it was lacking.
Yeah,
that's all.
Well, that about wraps it up. We've been going 50 minutes here. Everybody who is still listening, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, episode 20. It's a big one. And we are just now following up CitizenCon with this discussion, but it's not the end. It's not all. I will have plenty more coverage regarding CitizenCon in the coming weeks on my streams, on the website, and on my YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe there, share the link. If you are listening to this podcast on a platform, please leave a review possibly, and share it with your friends. And if you're watching this on YouTube, well, hi. Leave a comment down below and say what's up. Before we leave, though, go Mitch yourself. If you'd like to finish off with any final thoughts about CitizenCon.
I will just thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
not gonna lie, I was very giddy when I got that message, and I was like, oh, yep, I know about Star Citizen. Yeah, no, it's CitizenCon. I'll look. People just, be grateful that we got all this information, and a lot of it. I think I let myself down with my expectations, but hey, I'm excited for next year. Salvage, medical's getting improved all through next year. Cargo's getting improved all through next year. We've got a lot of ships on the way. If you're like me and you love your ships, there's a lot of ships on the way.
There are a lot of ships. There are a lot of ships in a new system.
Yeah, one thing I will agree with Astropub was it Astro? Someone. I'm disappointed that we didn't hear anything about medical ship or the Apollo or anything like that.
Yeah, a lot of people were expecting that.
Yeah, I was expecting that from the beginning of the year. I was like, bring on my Apollo. Medical's coming.
Ouch.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they'll hurt you in the expectations for sure. Well,
yeah.
I think that CIG at this point is on the back foot, and I think they need to do a little bit more now to pick up what was lost, or rather the potential that was lost with this event. I think this event could have really propped them up on a good pillar of hype and excitement for next year. And I think 315, that puts more of a burden on 315 to perform. So we'll see what happens, but this has been the Launch Sequence Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed these crazy opinions, and hope to see you next week for the next episode to talk about more Star Citizen games. Thanks again for coming, and I'll see you next time.